You are the sole doctor on the ship to which 16 mortally wounded soldiers are brought. You have mere minutes to save them. No one knows you are an imposter, without a diploma, without any real medical experience. But thanks to phenomenal memory and decisiveness, you perform all 16 operations, and you save every single one. But this was not the first brilliant scam. To understand what led to this scam, you need to start from the beginning.
Ferdinand Demara Jr. was born in 1921. In his childhood, before the Great Depression, his life was a fairy tale. His father earned well. The family lived in a large private house. Already at 4 years old, Fred ordered the servants to address him as Mr. Demara. This cultivated his sense of importance. But the Great Depression destroyed everything. The Demara family lost everything: their house, money, respect. Moving to a small shack became a burning, hellish shame for young Fred. The loss of the Mr. title, with which he had identified so early, became a deep psychological wound. So he wanted to regain everything as it was in his childhood, but not with money, rather with a role and respect. At 16, Fred ran away from home. Then his entire subsequent life, all his cons, it was one continuous, incredible search for recognition, his driving force. And so, the task: to live a life receiving everything: power, respect, genuine love, without having any rights or qualifications for it, being nobody. So, he makes his first move. He doesn't seek wealth or power immediately. He seeks an identity. He becomes one of them for a priest in a monastery, studying habits, words, movements. These are his first lessons in manipulation. Then he begins to seek a role. His telephone, his correspondence become his weapon. He plays on empathy, on the desire to be needed. After the monastery and the first lessons in deception, Demara sought more. The monastery offered respect, but he craved genuine status. In 1941, he joined the US Army. This was his path to honor, to the uniform. So, he starts from the very bottom, but with a dream of officer school. Ultimately, he possessed high intelligence, which would later play a significant role in his life. He passed the most difficult officer school exam, achieving the highest score. This was his triumph of intellect. But there was one small problem. Demara did not have a high school diploma, a formal requirement. The system did not look at intellect. The system demanded a piece of paper. So he was rejected. The dream of a uniform shattered against bureaucracy. He quits the army, and this was his first full-scale challenge to the system. He realizes he needs to create himself from scratch. Now, his goal, the US Navy, a different uniform, a different game. He doesn't just join the Navy, but then, under an assumed name, applies to college and successfully completes it. He proves he is capable of education. But all this was not about a real diploma, not about career advancement. It was about his driving force, an unceasing thirst for respect, power, and influence. All previous steps were preparation. Now he understood how the system worked. So, it was time for his biggest game. Under a new name, he becomes a surgeon on the Canadian military destroyer HMCS Cayuga during the Korean War. It was a bloody war, and once during battle, 16 mortally wounded soldiers were brought to the ship. The situation was critical, and it turned out that the only surgeon on board capable of providing help was none other than Demara. But he doesn't retreat. He doesn't panic. Realizing that these lives were literally in his hands, he makes an incredibly audacious decision. He locked himself in his cabin, took a surgery textbook, his phenomenal photographic memory, his very own superpower, allowed him to read and memorize everything needed in a matter of minutes. He became a doctor on the fly. And then an unexpected turn of events occurred. Demara, the thick doctor, independently performed all 16 operations. Each of them was very complex, and he saved the lives of all soldiers. Not a single one of his patients died. His lie, his scan, saved lives. So, the story of the miracle doctor from the Cayuga spread throughout the world. This made Demara a legend, giving him the recognition he chased his entire life. His name became synonymous with extraordinary heroism. But there was a big problem here. His deception came with a price. A newspaper published this story, and it was read by the real Dr. Joseph Sear, whose name he audaciously used. The end of an ideal medical career. The end of recognition. Demara had to flee again. Again, he had to hide his new identity, saving his own skin. After military service on the Cayuga and the worldwide recognition he couldn't truly claim, Ferdinand Demara disappeared again. He left fame behind and started a new scam. So, under the name Martin Godgard, he becomes a school teacher on the remote island of North Haven in Maine. Imagine that. You're a Latin, English, French teacher. You lead a scout troop. You are a Sunday school teacher. This is a completely different world, a different challenge. He strives to be a pillar of the community, but he does so through an absolute lie. And here Demara reaches the peak of his desire. He was so beloved by students and local residents that when his true identity was exposed, recognized by a student's mother, the community was in complete shock. They wouldn't believe it. Local residents who knew him as Martin Godgard even tried to convince the court to let him continue teaching. This was not ordinary fraud. This was genuine love. But again, he had to flee. Even where he was loved, his deception eventually caught up with him. Throughout his 40-year career, Demara tried on dozens of identities, from a monk seeking peace to a university dean and ultimately a prison psychiatrist in the harshest prison. It was a whole palette of imagined lives. So a clear pattern can be observed. Most of his roles were either highly intellectual or had great social influence and authority. He sought not just roles, but identities that carried power, respect, and the opportunity to be recognized. This was his true face, which he sought behind hundreds of other faces. But his fate was already waiting. In 1960, the world that knew nothing about him learned everything. Demara's story was adapted into the film The Great Imposter. Hollywood discovered him. So it was paradoxical. He craved recognition, fame, respect so much. He received it, but precisely this public recognition, unfortunately, destroyed the meaning of his existence. He became too famous. He was recognized. Demara could no longer continue his work. His life's game was over. He found himself back in the same state he fled from at 16, humiliated and insignificant. Ferdinand Waldo Demara died on June 7th, 1982, at the age of 60, from heart failure, not from war, not from a scalpel, not from prison, but from the emptiness that was inside. He left behind one big question. Can a person who had neither knowledge or right be called evil if his brilliant lie gave life to 16 soldiers?